chapter 4 is basically two sections. The first section, the first 13 verses of the chapter 4, discuss as the various questions that the Shaunaka rishis ask. And then the rest of the chapter is dedicated to Vyasadev's dividing the Vedas, and still he feels dissatisfied, and he begins to contemplate the causes of his dissatisfaction. And that's when actually Narada Muni comes to guide him. This chapter might look very simple, but as we know, this is the seed chapter for the rest of the Canto 1, especially these verses between 1 and 13, even to be very specific, verses 3 to 12. Those verses are considered as the seed verses from which the rest of the Canto 1 is going to come up. And the Srimad Bhagavatam, the question on the Srimad Bhagavatam asked in verse 3 of this chapter will lead to chapters 4, 5, and 6 of Canto 1. And the questions asked about Goswami between verse 4 and 8 leads to chapter 19. And the rest of the verses, like from verse 9, 10, 11, and 12, four verses asked about Parikshit Maharaj, leads to majority of the, the discussion of Canto 1 from chapter 7 onwards until chapter 18. It's all about Parikshit Maharaj, how he took birth, how he became a king, what did he do after becoming a king, how did he get cursed, and what did he do after getting cursed. The first three chapters of the Canto 1 is like the seed from which the rest of the Bhagavatam comes, because there was one of the question which, where has Dharma taken shelter after Krishna disappeared? So that led to the answer Srimad Bhagavatam. And that is further leading to Goswami saying, oh, I will speak that Bhagavatam to all of you. So those first three chapters are considered as the seed for the rest of the Bhagavatam. And similarly, these three verses of this chapter 4, from verse 3 to 12, are considered as the seed verses for the rest of the Canto 1. There are 44 verses. There are 44 verses in the chapter 4, and in the verses 1 to 13, actually, Shaunaka Rishi asks further questions to Suta Goswami, because Suta Goswami just said, I learned this Bhagavatam from Sukadeva Goswami when he was speaking it to Parikshit Maharaj. I heard it with rapt attention, and by his mercy, I have assimilated the Srimad Bhagavatam. And now I will relay that Srimad Bhagavatam to all of you according to my learning. Yet he says, according to my learning and according to my intelligence, whatever study I have done with my intelligence, whatever I can remember, whatever I have heard from Sukadeva Goswami, I will share it with all of you. So Shaunaka Muni becomes very, very happy hearing Suta Goswami, and he congratulates him and begins to ask questions. And what questions does he ask? He asks actually questions about Bhagavatam Maharaj. So he adds Srimad Bhagavatam, Sukadeva Goswami, and Parikshit Maharaj. And then in verses 14 to 25, Dev divides the Vedas to simplify and expand the Vedas for the people of Kali Yuga. And then we will see about why Vyasadev feels dissatisfied and what does he think when he feels dissatisfied in verses 26 to 31. And then Narada Muni arriving. The first verse is basically Vyasadev is setting the scene. So if you will see in the Bhagavatam this particular thing happen again and again, that whenever the author wants to tell us how the characters were feeling, then Vyasadev will step in actually, or Suta Goswami will step in if it's another story, because we are seeing, okay, Suta Goswami said, according to my learning and according to my intelligence, based on what I heard from my spiritual master, I will convey this Bhagavatam to you. Imagine, like, the sages, they are assembled for a sacrifice, a long sacrifice of 1,000 years. And here Suta Goswami is just answering every question they asked, the 6 questions, like straight answers, like very quickly. And he's just giving pointed answers, and they're wondering, my God, we asked 6 questions and all the 6 questions are covered. What will happen now? Will he just say, thank you very much, class done, and he will just go? So that's when Suta Goswami is saying, I will explain that Srimad to you. So then all the sages are very excited. So how will we know that they are excited? So that's when Vyasadeva is stepping in to tell us that how much happiness that the sages felt after hearing Suta Goswami say that, yeah, we are going to speak, I will speak Bhagavatam to you. So that's when Vyasadev steps in to tell us the feelings of the audience, because it's not very evident what they experienced just by their words. So that is why here Vyasadeva is stepping in. So after setting the scene, okay, how did Shravanakadi Rishi feel? And the expression of that feeling is being explained straight from the mouth of Shravanakadi Rishi from verse 2, where he says, Swami, you are the most respected among speakers. We are very happy that you are actually eager to speak Bhagavatam. Please feel free to tell us, because it's, you can see the reciprocation here, that okay, the Goswami just said I'm going to speak Bhagavatam, and they're like, okay, it's fine. No, they are very eager and expressing themselves. Yes, we are very happy, grateful, please speak more. So they are confirming to the speaker that they are interested to hear more. What is realization? He says that because Suta Goswami is saying, I will speak based on what I heard from Sukadeva Goswami according to my ability. So Prabhupada is taking on that theme and explaining in the purport, like, what is personal realization? So personal realization does not mean that we have to do something new to show that we are so great and so intelligent. We have to have full confidence in the previous acharya. We can never cross the previous acharyas. We can never say, like, we have this pastime in Shrit also, that a particular acharya, when he says, oh, I have written a commentary without touching upon Sridhar Swami. So he says, how is it possible? Like, he corrects that attitude, because that pastime is to teach us that what is the right attitude. We are not here to say something new which is outside what is shared by our acharyas. We don't need to screw new things out of these particular scriptures. However, we need to first of all have full faith and following in the previous acharyas, and also have to understand the subject matter, realize the subject matter, and then present the particular subject matter according to the particular circumstances in a suitable manner. Maybe audience may have a certain level of understanding, so accordingly we may present it, but the original purpose of the text should not be taken away. It should be maintained. So sometimes it can be very challenging. I'm not here to judge anybody, but personally it's very kind of a skillful balance is required to not lose the original purpose of the text, at the same time also bring in new lessons and make it more relevant. So no obscure meaning should be screwed out of it, yet it should be presented in an interesting manner for the understanding of the audience. And Prabhupada calls this as realization, that presenting something in an interesting manner, following in the footsteps of the acharyas without screwing out new meanings, but yet making the audience understand. This he is calling it as realization. So basically, faith in the tradition and previous acharyas, and one's own depth of realization, and also make it relevant for the future. So we need to hold to the past, the acharyas in one hand, and we need to hold the future in the other hand, and pass on the message to the best of our abilities with a sincere mood. So that is called as a realization. So after Suta Goswami is being congratulated and inspired to speak by Shravanakadi Rishi, Suta Goswami is ready to speak. But before that, Shravanakadi Rishis are asking clarifying questions. Yes, you want to speak about Bhagavatam, but before speaking about Bhagavatam, they have questions about the history of the Bhagavatam and the surroundings and the circumstances around Bhagavatam. And that's the very reason Vyasadev has chosen the conversation of Suta Goswami and Shravanakadi to present as Bhagavatam to us. He did not just present Dev Goswami speaking to Parikshit. He actually chose the version of Suta Goswami speaking to Shravanakadi Rishis, because these questions that they are asking from verse 3 to 12. Because if he just started Bhagavatam, and first verse is that Sukadeva Goswami is speaking to Parikshit Maharaj, we will not know what are the circumstances that led to the discussion between Sukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj. They themselves are not going to discuss that. And that is the reason that this version is chosen, because here in the whole canto, first canto is dedicated to this context of the Srimad Bhagavatam. What is its history? Why did Vyasadev write it? Why did Parikshit Maharaj get cursed? How did Shukadev and Parikshit meet? All of these background stories are given. And then the actual conversation begins from Canto 2. And this is the very reason Shukadev has chosen this version to present to us, so that we know the background. Otherwise, we would be thinking the same thing. Okay, who's Swami and who's Parikshit Maharaj? Like, why did he get cursed? What was that curse? And all those things we may have. And we also don't know how great they are. Without that, we may just start reading about them. So that's another reason. Sundaranand.
I may have got it wrong, but didn't you say earlier that out of the three versions, one is speaking, Vyasa is speaking to one in between, the one for where Swami speaks to Parikshit Maharaj.
Yeah. Say, for example, this Bhagavatam is actually essentially what Shuka Goswami spoke to Parikshit Maharaj. There is no doubt about it. However, the version that we have is being related by Suta Goswami to the sages because the additional layer of who's Shukadeva Goswami, who's Parikshit Maharaj, why did Vyasadev write Bhagavatam even at the first place? So those details are not spoken by Shukadeva Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj. And knowing them can actually make us appreciate Bhagavatam much more. Because if you see, any time we discuss about Bhagavatam, why Bhagavatam is so special, we will always say it is compiled at the spiritual maturity of Vyasadev. We always say, we always bring this pastime that how he compiled all the Vedic literatures and felt dissatisfied. Narada Muni came and gave him the chastisement that, oh, you forgot about exclusively glorifying Krishna. So then he edited Bhagavatam and then presented it. So we always say this as to glorify Bhagavatam's position, unique position among all Vedic literature, not just Puranas, or among all Vedic literature. But that is not being discussed by Shukadeva Goswami himself to Parikshit. So that is why that extra layer is given. Like any book you write, you always write an introduction to it or a preface where the author says what led him to write this particular book. So that part Vyasadeva is covering through the conversation between Suta Goswami and Shaunaka. Am I making sense, Sundaranand?
Yes. So he's referencing both conversations.
Yes. Essentially, Bhagavatam is conversation between Shukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj, but we are having an outer layer in order to add more context to that conversation.
Oh, thank you for this.
Okay. So the verse 3 is the sages are asking, okay, in what period Bhagavatam was written, what place it was first written, and why, first of all, like Bhagavatam was taken up, and from where did Krishna Vyasadeva actually get the inspiration to compile this literature? If you read the purport to this verse, Prabhupada says they already knew something about the history of the Bhagavatam. That's why they are asking these questions. They already had some idea that this is what happened. Otherwise, how would they even ask these questions about Bhagavatam? So they had some idea, but they wanted to hear more about that from Suta Goswami, because we all get some news here and there, and then we go and ask more about it. Oh, I heard this, what happened, like that. So same thing is happening here. Now the question about Bhagavatam is just one, and then questions about Sukadeva Goswami. Questions about Sukadeva Goswami are also very interesting, and stay with me because there are like more questions about Sukadeva Goswami than Bhagavatam. And if you say that after speaking about, they say, oh, Tasma Yogi, oh, his son was a great devotee, an equibalanced monist, and whose mind was always concentrated in monism. And he was transcendental to all kind of mundane activities. And he was not seen by anybody. He acted like an ignorant person. And they say they're glorifying Shukami basically. They were saying he was a Maha Yogi, and he was Samadran, means he was completely equipoised. He had a nirvana. His mind was concentrated. And an example is being given in the next verse. What kind of a Mahayogi he was, what kind of a Samadrin he was, what kind of a Nirvikalpa he was. All that, all the qualification they are saying in verse 4 is being given example in verse 5, because as soon as he took birth, he just left home and he started running towards the forest. And when he was running, there were women who were bathing there, and they did not see Shukaswami and feel any disturbance. They just continued to bathe. But as soon as Vyasadev came, they covered themselves. So Vyasadev observed it, and then he continued running behind Shukadev Goswami. But of course, Shukadev Goswami did not stop and he kept going. So Vyasadev realized, okay, he's not going to listen to me. So on his way back, he asked these ladies, oh, you didn't bother about my son who is like 16-year-old, but I'm an old person, but you people were like covering yourself. And they said, your son he's not having seeing any gender distinction. He is completely absorbed. He is spiritual, that we could see that he's not disturbed by our presence. But you as a Grihastha, you have this distinction. So that's why we covered. It's not that Vyasadev is not realized. We may say if Vyasadev is not realized, then why are we hearing Bhagavatam from him? How it will be pure? No, the point here is to glorify Sukadeva Goswami. Vyasadeva as a Grihastha follows his dharma properly, and as a completely equipoised, like a monist, Sukadeva Goswami is behaving according to his position. They both are transcendental. It's not that Vyasadeva is not transcendental, but here the point is to glorify Sukadeva Goswami. So, and he is a great yogi, and to that extent, he had no difference who is who. Like, it did not matter to him whether the people that whether whoever he is seeing is male or female. It's very hard. It's not that we can rise beyond the body. So he was so beyond the bodily consciousness. So his glory is being spoken in verse 5. And then verse 6, they are saying, how did actually people even recognize him? Because he always appeared so unkempt, and he was always in the forest. He was not like kind of easily recognizable. So they are questioning, okay, how did people actually recognize him when he entered the city of Hastinapur? Because he appears like a madman, dumb and retarded. Because people, just by seeing one, we cannot know their greatness. Just by looking at someone, it's not always possible to know how great they are, spiritually advanced. And that's why, even say, for example, many Babajis like Vamdas Babaji and Gauraj, all of them, they would behave in ways which was very difficult for normal people to understand. So Bakur always cautioned his followers, okay, don't go too close. Just go do your business and get away, because you cannot understand them by their appearance and activities. It's very difficult. So similarly, Shukadeva Goswami's activities were not easy to relate to, and he was always dumb like Jada Bharat. So Shukadeva Goswami was like that pretty much. He was completely absorbed in Brahman, that's all. And how did it so happen that King Parikshit met this great sage, making it possible for this great transcendental essence of the Vedas to be sung to him? So in verse 7, they are asking, okay, he was a great sage. He was always in the forest. Initially, he was a monist. Later, he became a devotee. So after he became a devotee, he was absorbed in Krishna before he was absorbed in Brahman. So either way, he was completely absorbed in transcendence. So how did these people recognize him, and how did he come to meet Parikshit? Because we see in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela that Mahaprabhu said, I will not meet Prataparaj. I don't want to meet a king. And here, Shukadeva Goswami is even beyond Varnashram. He's not even within Varnashram. He's even beyond Varnashram. See, he has no care in this world. So how did that a king and such a sage came to meet each other? And how did this conversation happen? Because I heard this conversation happened for 7 days and 7 nights, as Sutta Goswami says earlier. So his worry, his doubt is, I've heard he only stays in a home just enough time to milk a cow, and then he just moves on. He does not stay long enough in any place. He was constantly moving. So how did he stay for 7 days and 7 nights? And these are the questions related to Shukadev Goswami. And after this, the sages ask question about Parikshit Maharaj. So they also know some history of Parikshit Maharaj. So they ask, oh, Parikshit Maharaj, he is a great first class devotee of the Lord. Means his birth is also like a very wonderful birth, because they all have heard that how Krishna protected him in the womb of his mother. And that's why Parikshit Maharaj got this name, Vishnu Radha, one who is protected by Vishnu, even in the womb of his mother. So they are asking, oh, his birth and activities are all wonderful. So please tell us more about Parikshit Maharaj. And also, he was a great emperor and possessed all the opulences that one can think of. He was so exalted, and he was actually the glory or the prestige of the Pandus dynasty. Still, why did he actually want to die? Like, why did he give up everything and come and fast in the bank of the Ganges? What is the reason? Because he had no reason to just give up his life. He was young, he was the great king, he had everything under his control. So why? These reasons they are asking to clarify what are the circumstances that led to Parikshit's renunciation. And they also say he was such a great emperor that all his enemies actually would come and surrender to him. Like, they were all working under him. They were all like subservient to him. He was a great emperor. And he was full of youth and strength. He had no health reasons to give up his life. He had no political reasons to give up life. It was not that some other king is putting tariffs or increasing, there was trade no difficulty, nothing like that. He was the emperor. Everybody was coming and surrendering to him. And personally, he was full of youth. It's not that he was having back pain, or he was like he can be a king, he cannot do of any of those things. No, personal health was fit, and he possessed kingly opulences that were difficult to give up. He had such comfort and such quality of life. So why did he want to give up everything, including his life? It's not just giving up the kingdom and going to forest. He just was ready to give up his life. He was fasting until death. And the other question they also have is like, usually a devotee of his caliber, Parikshit, but they don't live for personal selfish interest, especially as a king. They say Shiva. So that those devotees of the Lord, they are Shivaya, means basically they are like, he is there living to give shelter to others, especially as a king. He is living to give shelter to his citizens, parashraya. So, and what kind of shelter he was giving? Bhavaya, because he was teaching them how to achieve spiritual perfection, because he even controlled the flow of Kali. He made sure the Kali's influence was not there. So he helped the citizens to advance spiritually. And Bhutaye, he also gave material wealth. So there was economic development, there were material welfare was very strong. He made sure everybody was taken care of materially, and he also took care of them spiritually. And that is why he was very auspicious. Shiva, he was so auspicious for the kingdom and the citizens. And the only reason he was living was to give shelter to others. Then why would he actually give up that shelter, which is his life? And why would he not continue to give shelter to others? So in this way, they pose different questions to about Parikshit Maharaj. And they also, at the end of the questions, again, Suta Goswami is saying, okay, you are expert in explaining everything, Suta Goswami, please take your time to answer our questions. He again, like kind of showing the gratitude. We know that you're very expert in the meaning of all these subjects. And they also say, except some portions of the Vedas, you know everything. So you can actually explain to answer all our questions very clearly. And Prabhupada says that Goswami, because he was born in a Brahmana family, so he didn't know certain portions of the Vedas. He was not into performing sacrifices or anything. He he focused on the essence of the Vedas, and also he was learned in the Puranas and the other literatures and the conclusion of the Vedas. He didn't know how to administer certain Vedic rites, but it was not because it was not his thing. So the one that is why he might not know those karma kanda sections of the Vedas, but other than that, he knew the essence of the Vedas and everything about the Puranas, Itihas, and everything. And of course, he knew Bhagavatam, which is the essence of all the Vedic literature, the ripened fruit of all the Vedas. So that is why Suta Goswami is being chosen here as the right person to answer all the answers. And also, Prabhupada says in this particular purport, a realization is more important than parrot like chanting. So we may try to understand the flow of the chapters and the what is being explained in this. So it's a certain level of study that we are all doing here. But of course, again, Bhagavatam is not just for studying; it is also for realizing. So the more we develop taste in actually hearing and chanting Bhagavatam, and personally immersing ourselves in the Bhagavatam and relishing it, and also gradually through our personal life and practice, realizing it. So we see how all these devotees, okay, what did Parikshit Maharaj do? How was Sukadeva Goswami? What is Vyasadev going to do? We see all of these things, and not to know, but to actually emulate them, to follow in their footsteps. And these are the first 13 questions, in which questions about Bhagavad Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj are asked by the sages. And after this, we will see what does Suta Goswami speak in response to these questions. Before I take the next section of the chapter, if there is anything anyone wants to reflect, share, anything that you found interesting in these verses, please feel free. I'd like to hear some voices. Hare Krishna, yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare
I was
Krishna.
just thinking while you were answering Sundarananda's question about that second layer,
Mm.
right, provided by Sutta Goswami. You know, that information that he can give from his position. This is just a comment. You know that information that Sutta Goswami was given. It could not have been given by Sukadeva Goswami himself, like the history, and because it would have sounded weird for him to like tell his own history, no?
Yeah,
So it had to come from somebody else.
true.
So anyway, just this.
And also
Just
for
all.
Vyasadeva to write write an appendix, okay, why did I write this on his own would also be weird. So it's much easier to make it like third person.
Yeah, yeah, more natural, you
Yeah,
know.
more sure.
Otherwise, it could seem kind of, how should I say,
Mm.
self-congratulatory or
Yes.
like you're,
Yes.
boastful or something.
Yeah, we can see how much thought has gone in the whole compilation.
Yeah, actually, you were talking about Donna Maharaj. A point that he was making just this morning was that, you know, a devotee, is not supposed to talk about himself.
Mm.
Like because if he is the hero of the story, right, then it won't look
Mm.
right. So that's the reason why a devotee should not talk about himself, because for the same reason. Anyway.
Thank you, Harki. Yes, Harishan.
Sorry, I was in mid pro. So yeah, the questions that Sage is asked, right? Like looks like the answers are also there. Most of them, like they're elaborately asking the questions. Just want to reflect on that. Yeah.
Yeah, they do know something about all
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
They have some information for sure. That's what Prabhupada says in the Prabhupada also. Yes. So now that like Kami patiently heard all their questions, now he begins to reply. And believe me, this verse 14 is from here till 19 chapter end is just answer for those three questions essentially. This is going to be the whole rest of the Canto 1. So anything, whenever you read a chapter and you see why is this being even discussed, so you will be able to trace it back to these three questions. It would be either about Bhagavatam or about Swami or about Parikshit. Within the Canto 1, the rest of the chapters from now on until the end of the Canto, anytime you look at a chapter and think, oh, why is this even being discussed? That'll have some relation to either of these one personality, Bhagavatam, Sukadeva, Goswami. Okay. So with that, like the Goswami begins to set the scene for Bhagavatam's appearance. So for before Bhagavatam compilation, then what did Vyasadev do and why it led him to compile Bhagavatam? So that's history is what he is glorifying here now, sharing with us. That Vyasadeva was born of Rashtra and Satyavati Devi in the third part of Yuga. That is, each Yuga has a three sections. It is called as Yuga Sandhyas. There are two Yuga Sandhyas. That is, say for example, Treta Yuga and Dwapara Yuga, two Yugas. So the end of Treta Yuga and the beginning of Dwapara Yuga will match. That is one Sandhya. And then the actual Dwapara Yuga. And then Dwapara Yuga and Kali Yuga will overlap. That is another Yuga Sandhya. So there is it's usually Yuga Sandhya is considered as like 5,000 to 10,000 years usually, because the yugas in themselves are so big. So even the Yuga Sandhya itself is like a 5,000 years. Certain when 5,000 years is a huge time, but it's just an Yuga Sandhya, and we are currently just crossing out of that Yuga Sandhya period. The full Kali Yuga will manifest after the Yuga Sandhya period, which is already we're just like stepping towards the end of that Yuga Sandhya. And he was born in the Yuga Sandhya of Dwapara and Kali Yuga. That is the beginning of the last 5,000 years of Dwapara, and the beginning 5,000 years of Kali Yuga is the Yuga Sandhya. So he was born towards the end of the third part of the Dwapara Yuga. And Prabhupada interprets it differently. He interprets it saying he was born when the second millennium overlapped with the third. What does that mean? Usually it should be Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, and Kali Yuga. That is the natural order. Treta means three, and Dwapara means two. So it should be one, two, three, four. But only when Krishna appears in once in a day of Brahma, in the millennium when Krishna appears, then Treta and Dwapara becomes overlapped. They get switched. So that means this Vyasadeva was born when Krishna was appearing in the same time. So the same verse, different acharyas interpreted differently. So Prabhupada sees it as when the Dwapara and Treta got switched, that's when Vyasadeva was born, which is also true. But if you see it in another perspective, within that Dwapara, Vyasadeva was born towards the third part of Vyasa Yuga, that is the Yuga Sandhya. Is there any questions on that? Hope I'm clear. Yes, Hari.
So actually, if you see the maybe Bharata, actually I watched it. So actually, is there prior to like all these Pandavas and Kauravas, right?
Yeah.
So then why it is Sanjay actually? Dwapara is actually it should be in the beginning, right? No?
Oh, Sandhya means like Dwapara Yuga, say for example, Dwapara Yuga is like how big it is. It's like Kali Yuga is like 4,32,000 years. So add another zero. That's how long Dwapara Yuga is. When we are speaking about Sandhya, means he was born towards the end of that Dwapara. That's what they are saying.
So that means even Krishna born even at the end of the Dwapara Yuga, that means Sanjay time.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Because
Okay.
say for example, Bhagavad Gita was spoken before 5,000 years.
Yeah.
And as soon as Krishna left, Kali Yuga also came. So that means like Dwapara was ending. And Krishna lived approximately 125 years only. So it was pretty much towards the end of the Dwapara Yuga that Krishna was here.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah.
And Mother Gail, is the hand raised now or from earlier?
Oh, you know it's going to be now, Prabhu.
Okay.
Always fresh hand. No, actually, about this Sandhya thing, right? For one thing, isn't it like the Sandhya of the preceding and the subsequent yugas? Is it something like 10% of the length of time, right?
Yes, that's what
10%?
I've heard. There is 10% in the beginning, 10% at the end, Sandhya Amsha and Sandhya Rupa, and then the Yuga Rupa is 80%. The middle Yuga is 80%.
Okay, and then last thing is when it comes to the switch, right, between between Treta and Dwapara Yuga, I'm wondering, it can't be in name only, so the qualities associated with Treta and the qualities associated with Dwapara, do those actually get switched? For example, the Yuga Dharmas. So now we're in Kali Yuga, right? So Yuga. What's my question? I think you know my question, right? Like
if I get it, like I'll paraphrase, you can let me know if I got your question. Like you're saying, like, was it just the name change, or did the qualities and the Yuga Dharma, everything got like switched? I would say this much. Otherwise, Treta Yuga would be of the duration of Dwapara Yuga, and Dwapara Yuga would be of the duration of the Treta Yuga. Their durations was when they exchanged, the durations got exchanged. Dwapara Yuga should be longer, like the actual Treta Yuga, and the Treta Yuga should have been shorter. But because they exchanged position, the times extended for each of the yugas. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
When they got exchanged, Treta got the amount of time of the Dwapara, and Dwapara got the amount of time of the.
Okay, so now that makes sense.
Yes.
And then also the Yuga Dharma, right? That should also have gotten switched, no?
Dharma does not seem like got switched based on what the verse that I just quoted. It's always the second yuga. It is first yuga is meditation, second yuga is sacrifices, third yuga is deity worship, and the fourth yuga is harinam. So that order is maintained. It's just like the order of that. Only. Yeah, just the duration thing. The order did not change because deity worship was still for Dwapara Yuga.
Okay, Prabhu, thank you.
Thank you. I narrowly escaped, Mother Gail. I was like, when he started asking the question, oh my God, I don't know how the intelligence. Oh, it's the duo. Thank you. Now that he is giving, when did Vyasadev when did he take birth and who were his parents, Parashara? And then he is saying, okay, one morning Vyasadev bathed in the Saraswati, because they also asked the question, where did he write it? So he's saying, okay, he bathed in the Saraswati river, which at that time was not yet extinct. It was flowing. So he bathed in the Saraswati and sat alone to meditate. And in his meditation, he could actually see a vision of all the problems that would appear in Kali Yuga, all the irregularities that would happen as part of the Kali Yuga, which is about to come. So he sees all those irregularities. Let me take proper translation. We'll have more details. So he saw all the anomalies in the upcoming millennium of Kali Yuga. And this happens on the earth in different ages, because over the flow of time, nobody can stop it. It's just the natural flow of time. So now that he has seen all those irregularities coming up in Kali Yuga, he becomes very concerned. Oh, okay. And what does he see? And he sees that basically he sees deterioration of everything due to Kali Yuga. So he's seeing that people are becoming faithless. Their duration of life is going to be reduced. And basically there is one very nice thing here, like that the mode of goodness will be taken away, that there would be completely impatience due to Swan. Means because of lacking mode of goodness, people will also have no patience. And also, obviously, age and health and strength, all of these things also deteriorate. Not just the physical ability, even the mental ability deteriorates, and the character also deteriorates. And this is all due to lack of goodness. So that is why then Prabhupada always says, okay, you chant Hare Krishna and also follow the regulative principles, because then those principles actually keep us in the mode of goodness. Then we can actually counter the effect of Kali Yuga. So that is why the regulative principles are again emphasized, because only when we counter the effect of Kali Yuga, we'll be able to progress further. So otherwise, the chanting will be drained by the influence of the Kali Yuga. So to keep ourselves free from that, and all the principles are given of lifestyle principles, and also they are the principles of cognizance. They give you knowledge. Once we just by chanting alone, without having a supportive lifestyle, it will be very difficult to advance further. Spiritual knowledge becomes difficult to grasp when we are in the mode of passion and ignorance. So that is why here we can see this verse that Vyasadev is seeing Shakti. So all of these things is due to lack of goodness. And when people maintain life mode of goodness, even lifetime, even within this world, can within this age also, people can increase. Like we have seen our grandparents, they all lived pretty better life. They were like mobile until they were very old, and they lived longer lives, healthier lives. And even within the last 20-30 years, we could see that difference. And then now that he has seen all of these anomalies, what exactly will happen in Kali Yuga, he understands, okay, these people are going to be short-lived, and they're going to be impatient. They don't have the enough patience to read all the Vedic literatures, and then they will not have even enough mode of goodness. So as an author of Vedic literature, immediately because he is a Shakti, his appearance itself is for this sake. That is his life's work. What is he going to do? What he is going to do is his life's work. So when the right time came in the meditation, Krishna showed him, okay, your time has come. This is how the future is going to be. So he sees the future very clearly. So he knows for whom he is doing what he is doing. If he does not know who is his audience, then how will he actually divide the Vedas, and how will he actually do his work? So by looking at, that's why the future vision is given to him, so that he understands what is the qualification of his audience. So his audience is going to be short-lived, impatient, and is going to lack seriously more in mode of goodness. So he understands, okay, to help purify people, then he divides the Vedas into 4 for easier access and assimilation. He understands they don't have enough patience and knowledge and life to learn all these Vedic literatures and apply them in their lives. So he thinks, okay, when sometimes you have a big chapati, you want to give it to a kid, so then you break it into small pieces so that one can start eating piece by piece. So similarly, he divides the Vedas into 4, and he gives it to different people. And apart from that, he also compiles Puranas and historical accounts, which are called as fifth Veda. And this particular verse is so important that Swami uses it as a reference. They are called as fifth Veda. Many people think, oh, Purana, below my dignity to read, I straight read Veda. But no, here he is saying, no, they are Panchama Veda, they are also fifth Veda. And after the Vedas were divided into 4 divisions, then he gives it to different authorities so that they can continue to expand it and teach it to others. And in that way, keep the continuation. So Paila Rishi gets Rigveda, Aimini Rishi gets Samaveda, Vaishampayana gets Ajurveda, and Muni gets Veda. And Roma Harshana, he gets the Purana. And who is this Roma Harshan? This Roma Harshan is the father of Suta Goswami. This Roma Harshan is the same one who got killed by Balramji. We see that later, when Balramji was traveling, he did not take part in the Maha. And during that time, he comes across Romaharshan speaking all the Puranas to the same sages, Shaunaka, and he sees Romaharshan is not well behaved, so he kills him. And the sages are aghast. Oh my God, we wanted to hear for thousands of years, and here you killed our speaker, and we had blessed him to live long. So how are you going to reconcile this needs of us and our blessings? So, and then they finally come, Balramji actually installs his son, Romaharshan Suta Goswami. They say his son is well behaved and he is also well knowledgeable. So all his life that he had to live, we give these blessings that Suta Goswami lived long. And that is why in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, you see, they keep saying, live Suta Goswami, long live Suta Goswami. They keep blessing Suta Goswami for a long life because his father got killed quickly. So that's why they keep telling that, please, Sudha Goswami, live longer to speak to us the Bhagavatam. And so this is the connection, that he's the father of Sudha Goswami, Romaharshan. He gets all the Puranas and he gets all the Itihasas. And after that, they all actually learn it from Vyasadev, and then they bring that knowledge to their disciples, grand disciples. And in this way, the Sampradaya gets expanding, the knowledge gets transmitted through Guru Sishya Parampara. And then that's great. Like Vyasadev, who's very kind, he in this way edits the Vedas so it could be assimilated by all kinds of people, less intellectual men. So he says that Vyasadev edited all these things to help who are men who are less intellectual, because everybody in this age is going to be less intelligent. And he also specifically to help women and other people, he also compiled Mahabharata. So the reason that he did was, traditionally women did not go to Gurukula to learn from the teachers, because the boys were sent when they are young, around 5 years until they are 20, around that time, depending on their varna, they were sent to live with their guru. They would live in their guru's ashram. They might visit their parents, but still they predominantly lived along with the guru, served the guru and learned from them. But the girls were not sent away like that to guru's ashram. Rather, they were given intelligence depending on their varna. If they, for sure, if they were Brahmanical, they did learn how to do sacrifices, because there is plenty of Vedic evidence that women also did daily sacrifice. How deity worship at home is usually, even today, is done a lot of times by women. It's not like that, but they tend to do more. The same way the sacrifices were done. There were sacrifices, Agnihotra, all these sacrifices, they were always allowed to do. So if they are from the Varna of Brahmanas, then the ladies actually learned how to help the Vedic sacrifices. They were allowed to do certain sacrifices in their own homes, and they were also trained to assist the bigger sacrifices. And we see Yagyapatnis, they were supposed to assist their husbands, but they go away to give food to Krishna. And we see in ninth canto also. So they were trained to involve in the profession of their family. And for sure, the Ranis, they knew how to do politics. They knew the details of palace, and even fighting in extreme conditions. They were always trained according to their own nature and their family details. They were always trained. Women always who are in the business world, or if they are in the agricultural families, they knew what to do. They actually ran a lot of it. However, they did not go to Gurukul. Even men in these lower ashrams did not stay in Gurukul for very long. You see, Arjuna, they all went for Gurukul few years. They learned military and little bit of spiritual knowledge, and then they are out. But Sudama, when Krishna and Sudama went, Sudama ends up staying longer. Krishna leaves back very earlier, because a Brahminical person continues to stay there and continues to learn. And especially if they are going to become sannyasis, then they stay longer, and they just leave from there to become a sannyasi. They don't go into the different ashrams. So in this way, for the sake of helping those people who did not go to Kula to learn all the Vedic literatures and all of those things, it is not required, because again, like Sutta Goswami himself did not learn all the Vedic rites, because each person were doing whatever they were good at according to their nature. Because today it's an electricity based civilization. You just remove electricity from today's world, then naturally everybody will start thinking how Krishna says, according to their ability, what they can do and what they cannot do. Today, because there is electricity, there is a lot of confusion. We tend to do others' work, and then we feel dissatisfied because of that. So the moment electricity is removed, we will all get back to what we can do physically, what is our ability, intellectually, what's our ability. Accordingly, we'll choose work. So in order to help people, everyone else who did not have an opportunity to go to Gurukul and stay there and learn all the Vedic literatures and all of that, then he compiled Itihasas and Mahabharata, because stories are very easy to propagate. There was no TV, there was no drama, but people every evening, they watched these dramas being performed by live people. So the stories were kept alive through these kind of, it was entertainment plus enlightenment. Even in India today, people, like, we all grew up with little TV, but still, even before TV came, people knew all the Mahabharata stories, Ramayana stories, because it was a constant cultural thing that people learned all these stories. And even when the movies came in the beginning in India, all the movies were based on Puranas and Ramayana. It took some 10-15 years to change into romance and social topics. Initially, it was all just Ramayana, Mahabharata, and various Puranic stories. And after compiling Mahabharata, so then still his mind was not satisfied. So although he engaged himself fully, his mind was not satisfied. And he was feeling that, oh, there is something missing. And that's when he started contemplating, okay, what is this that I have undergone strict disciplinary vows, I have worshipped the Vedas, I have worshipped my spiritual masters, I have performed all my duties properly, I have not just written as I have not just written Upanishads, but I have also compiled a Vedanta Sutra. After that, I also wrote Mahabharata and the various Puranas and everything I have done. I have covered all kinds of people. Still, why am I feeling incomplete? Though I feel like I myself am fully equipped with everything required by the Vedas. I have done everything. I am perfect in my execution of duties. Still, why am I feeling incomplete? So this is what his confusion is. But he has some indication in his own heart. He's feeling. He says, maybe I forgot to point out the devotional service of the Lord. Maybe that is the reason. So we always know whenever we feel little lost in our life, drained and confused, we do have some indication if we are very honest, but we may not have strength to overcome the problem, but we may have a little indication where is the pain point. We may have some inclination Krishna will give us. Similarly, he is having some indication, but it will be clarified by Narada Muni. And at that time, Narada Muni comes and he welcomes Narada Muni and honors them, and their conversation will happen in the next chapter. We all know that we try to see each chapter through the lens of the 10 chapters of 10 topics of Srimad Bhagavatam, which are Sarga, Visarga, Sthanam, Poshana, Mukti, Manvan Mukti, and Ashraya. So, based on that understanding, in this we see how Parikshit Maharaj was protected by Krishna in the womb of his mother. So, that refers to Poshana, protection of the Supreme Lord, special protection. And also we see the core theme of this chapter is glories of Sukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj. They are devotees. So it can come under Ishanu Katha. Ishanu is devotees and Katha about devotees. And also Vyasadev's realization that I did so much, but without including Krishna, he feels dissatisfied. So Ashraya is also being indicated in this thematically. In this chapter, if you want to consider, these three themes are touched upon. And based on the Canto level context, now we saw the overall book level context based on the 10 topics of Bhagavatam, this chapter. But every Canto also has a context. Canto 1 context is Canto 1 gives what is the qualification of the speaker, what is the qualification of the hearer, and what is Uttadya, means what is the ultimate object of realization and what is the process. These things are the topics. So we see the mood of Suta Goswami and Shaunaka the rishis here. We also see the mood of Narada Muni. We see what like Vyasadev is going through. He tried his best, still he is going through some confusion. So that will also come. Adhikani is also there. And of course, we discuss the history of Bhagavatam because it is going to give us, it is going to show us the Adhikari. An introduction to the speaker and hearer of Srimad Bhagavatam is also given. Who's Parikshit Maharaj? What was his qualification? Who's Shukami? What was his qualification? We discussed all of that. And there is three Yojana. If we look this chapter through this lens of Sambandha Yojana, then we can see that how this chapter introduces key devotees like Sukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj and their relationships. And it also shows the renunciation of Parikshit Maharaj. It shows the renunciation of Sukadeva Goswami. So pointing towards one's spiritual identity, how Parikshit was a great king, but when it is time for dying, he focused on his connection with Krishna. And Sukadeva Goswami was so renounced from his very birth, he just focused on his spiritual connection with Krishna. So that is also being hinted. And we also see Vyasadev, he's gradually realizing the need to glorify bhakti. So Abhidaya process, his Abhidaya was a little bit confused. So that is also being indicated that bhakti is the essence of real spiritual engagement. And Prayojana, by glorifying Suta Goswami, by glorifying Vyasadev, by glorifying Shuka Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj, this chapter is showing that how ultimate achievement in life is Krishna, is love of God. Each one may have a different life. Vyasadev has a different life, Sukha Goswami has a different life, Parikshit Maharaj has a different life. But Their life may be different, but their goal is all same. They're all working towards love of God. They're all working to help others in the service of Krishna. So they may have different types of lives. The details may be very different, but their goal is all one. So in this way, we can see